welcome to the Media Reveal. And today we'll be looking at the concept decriminalization of petty offences. To discuss this with me, I have in the studio Mr. Femi Okewo, Head Judiciary Desk, Nigerian Television Authority. You're welcome, Mr. Femi.
Always nice to be on this platform. Thank you.
All right, sir. So let's get straight to business.
Yes.
What offences can we regard as petty offences?
Sure, the name petty speaks for itself. These are minor offenses, and they have very many classifications. There are property offenses that can be considered as minor offenses. There are offenses of theft, depending on the weight of the materials, the property involved. There are misdemeanors that are also classified as petty offenses. Generally, they are offenses that the law tries to put in a way where the punishment, the sentencing, is not in the same category with some major offenses, or what they will call some areas where the law tries to discourage. And of course, there are no offenses that the law tries to encourage, but it will be unfair of the law to place all offenses at the same level. And that's why the minor ones are put in a place where the judges or people, the courts, are made to give them a sense that if these persons who are accused, the suspects, are given a hope of reformation, greater hope of reformation, and faster one than the major offenses.
All right, so we've discovered that a lot of people who have committed such offenses, a whole lot of them are in our Nigerian prisons, and some of them are still awaiting trial for a long period of time. What can you say about this, being a judiciary correspondent?
It's most unfortunate, and we move around with prisons. You know, there is this presidential committee on prisons decongestion. Even before this government set up the presidential committee on prison decongestion, it's also part of the law. It has always been part of the law for judges and magistrates to visit prisons, particularly chief judges of states, heads of courts, to visit prisons and decongest these prisons and look at areas where people have overstayed their stay in prison, awaiting trial, possibly sometimes staying beyond the limit of sentencing if they were sentenced. And then for the case we are discussing now, very many minor offenses. Now, we visited Lagos, and you know, Lagos, like most states should be doing, is trying to clean up, is trying to look neat. And so part of the offenses that we discovered in prisons are people who go to dump refuse somewhere. And imagine somebody who goes to dump refuse ending up in prison. Now, it's not as if in most cases they are sentenced to prison by the judges. It is that they are fined, they are given fines that they cannot pay, and so they end up in prisons. And so the various NGOs and the committee tries to pay off these fines and let them go. But the Administration of Criminal Justice Act has provided for non-custodial sentencing. And so there's no point why such offenders, people who go to dump refuse at the wrong places, traffic offenses, someone who steals a chicken, someone who steals a loaf of bread, ends up in prison. Now, it just does not make sense for someone who goes to steal, while no offense is encouraged, to steal a loaf of bread, is fined 10,000 naira. Certainly.
All right, sir. We discovered that some of these offenses, like loitering, being a vagabond, and hawking.
Yes, hawking.
All of these offenses are no longer in the book of laws in our society. But we see that the law enforcement agencies are still enforcing these laws on the people, and the people are not aware. even some of these law enforcement agencies are not also aware of these things, what role is the media playing in ensuring that the people know their rights?
I think the media has a duty to open up the judicial system.
Okay.
And sometimes judges give sentencing or give remand orders or holding orders and don't ask for return dates.
Yes.
What that means is that you, for instance, even for major offenses, a judge says, okay, keep this person in custody, but does not ask for a date for that person to be returned to court. And so the man just goes to the cell and remains there at the liberty of those people who would take him to court. No date to return to court. So the media must project what is happening in the judicial system. But it's not all the time that these cases go to the courts. Sometimes they are just put in police cells. You see, we unfortunately, we are focusing a lot on the official custody system in Nigeria. There are some unofficial custody system which we are not looking at. Police cells, FCC, other, they too are allowed by the law, but the number of people who are there are not even known in terms of statistics. I think the media has a big duty to understand what must lead into someone being put behind bars, and why such a person, even against the provisions of the law, ends up behind the bars. And if we focus on those areas effectively, I think the populace will be more educated. You have just mentioned it. Sometimes there are sweeping arrests. People go, the police go to some hideouts and pick up people, and they just dump them either behind police cells or take them, because the law does not allow you to take any suspect to the prison without a warrant. So you take them to a court, a magistrate court, or as the case may be, and you get a warrant of detention, but nothing is done to review that warrant.
All right, sir. I would also like to ask you, the issue of human rights comes to play in all of this. How well is the media enlightening the public on their rights? Because we find out that a lot of people who fall into this category are the vulnerable in the society.
I want to say that just as the media has a role, indeed, the people who play a greater role than the media are NGOs, civil society organizations. They are the ones that go visit prisons. And sometimes, if you visit prisons in the company of the media men, it helps the cause more, rather than go to prisons and pay fines and just go back. If you go accompanied by the media personnel, it helps the society to know. The prisons are security zones, and most of the time the media is not allowed to go. But if NGOs or governmental organizations that are licensed to go to release prisoners go in the company of media men, then that forms a veritable platform for the media to know what is happening behind those big tall walls and able to report to the society. If they are not given access is a major thing. The media is hardly given access to any of those prisons or any of those detention centers. Right. So if we can get access, it will help.
Rounding off, you agree with me that a lot of work still needs to be done.
Big work really needs to be done, both by civil society and the media. All
right, thank you very much, Mr. Femi. It was nice having you in the studio. Well, and that's the media review segment. It's back to you, Omini.
Well, it's time to go. Kende?
Well, we've had a lot about the concept, and we know what our right is now. So it is left for us as Nigerians, as individuals, when you're faced with such challenges, you know what to do. We hope that this concept will be taken to other parts of the country, like our guest on the show talked about it being on, they've been talking about it in 5 states of the country, and we hope that it will be spread across other states of the country as well.
And for the remaining schoolgirls who were abducted from Chibok and Leah Sharibu, hope is not lost. The president says their case is still in the front burner. So let us pray and hope that all the agencies involved, the interlocutors, are working towards a final release of these persons, our sisters who are held in captivity. Well, thanks for being on Inside today. On behalf of all of us, may always make time to be guests on the program. Bye-bye.